Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage. Matthew Peterson is out for one more day, but have no fear. Our DC aficionado is here. Chris Bedford, how's it going out there today?
Thanks. Sweaty, hot, but hey, the jump out boys are cruising around town, just bagging teenagers, making arrests, and scaring the heck out of libs. So, it's a good sweaty day in DC.
So it's okay. And there's so much more going on. These headlines that we get week in and week out, Chris, they're crazy, and they just keep coming. And the latest one involves Adam Schiff. We know he's one of the most crooked politicians out there in Congress. And Schiff went through and weaponized his position on the House Intelligence Committee to push the false Russia hoax. And then he paraded in front of every camera that he could find, lying to the American people again and again.
The Russians offered help, which we know they did. The campaign accepted help, which we know they did. The Russians then delivered help, which we know they did.
There is circumstantial evidence of collusion. The case is more than that, and I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now.
Last March, you said you had more than circumstantial evidence of treasonous collusion with Russia.
I've certainly said that there's ample evidence of collusion. But we do know this. The Russians offered help. The campaign accepted help. The Russians gave help, and the president made full use of that help.
So you can hear, Chris, he's trying to place a narrative in the media again and again and again. But now we have a Democrat whistleblower that came out and told the FBI that Adam Schiff said, oh, it's okay to leak classified information out there, give the intel out there, because we need to hurt Donald Trump. We know that that's what's happening right now.
I mean, this is an old game. I mean, Richard Nixon, in his first book, which is one of his better ones, complained bitterly about how John F. Kennedy would go into the classified briefings with him and then come out and make up a bunch of stuff, and he couldn't even refute it because it was classified and give that to the press. Schiff, this is a funny story. I'm glad that there's a Democratic whistleblower on the record, but this is just, everyone in D.C. knew it. I remember yelling at the screen when one after another really stupid stories would come out that would be proven false. And after it's proven false, I'd yell at the screen or the newspaper or whatever, when a reporter is going to stop taking tips from Adam Schiff? His game was always to take different classified reports, take things that hadn't been given out, and take sections of it. And these are real sections. And you would get the reporter to look at that section. And these reporters, they're not that bright. And it confirms all of their priors. So what they would do is they'd run to the presses with it, and their editors, it confirms all their priors. So they just say, that looks right. Obviously, Donald Trump is a Russian agent, so we're just going to run with this. And it happened over and over again. And I think the only reason it was allowed to continue for so long, and the reporters were willing to be embarrassed so many times by Adam Schiff, is that nobody really actually held them to account. I mean, people got promoted. People got Pulitzers. People got raises. Adam Schiff got a Senate position. No one in their squad, that kind of DC political media squad or the Senate or the Democratic Party squad, was actually ever going to do anything about it. It served the party's interests for you to be out there telling lies. Sure, later on we can retract it, but it's just like the classic story that they teach in newspaper ethics, that if you call somebody a rapist on the front page and then you print, oh, it turns out they're innocent on page 10, the damage is done. That person's reputation's in the gutter. That's not going away. And that's the danger here, and that's what people really benefited from. I really don't think that ethics just went out the window. Good business practices went out the window. Basic journalism went out the window. Needing more than one source and actually having to confirm a story went out the window. And all of these things were ironclad rules of the business. All of them went away in the service of the greater good, which was Orange man bad, we must stop Donald Trump.
If we look at the timeline, like we all lived through 2017, we remember when this was on the news every night. But then you go to 2023, there was the FBI investigation and they were looking into this. Okay, it's now 2025, right? Kash Patel is coming out saying we found it, we declassified it. Now Congress can actually go through and look at how classified info was leaked to shape all the political narratives and decide for themselves if our institutions were weaponized against the American people. Oh, okay. So 2017 to present day, this is a fairly long time frame for what we're dealing with here. When we had the idea, the inklings there, that something wasn't right with this, right? We've known this for so long. So what does this tell us about just how deep the deep state is, and just the fact that members of Congress had no problem going through and leaking these things to the media, knowing that they were false all along?
And there's such a shamelessness to it, isn't there? Like I said, who's going to hold them to account? I mean, Eric Wemple at the Washington Post, whose column is not even printed in the newspaper, it's just printed online. He went through and he said, hey, this is really embarrassing for us, but nobody cared at the end of the day. I mean, it didn't end up mattering. When you don't have any accountability, they'll just continue. And it was successful. And the funny thing is, they weaponized disinformation and used it to undermine faith in American elections and to undermine officials and to target them to achieve political ends. Is that not a problem? I mean, isn't that supposedly the big issue here that everyone's talking about? Is exactly what they did. And I know it's become kind of just like passe or kind of just cliche to point out that things are Orwellian. But when you do that, and then you literally appoint ministers of disinformation, I guess they had different titles, like Undersecretary for Disinformation or something like that. When you do this, you try to throw people's scent off, and you say we're the party that stands against it, and they never were. I mean, and what was the answer from MAGA faithful and people, or the Russian bot farm? It was memes, Facebook memes, and Instagram memes, and Twitter memes, and TikTok reels, and pretty funny ones. Some of them, the American-made ones, but it was always a lie. It was all a lie. And there's a system, an accreditation system in the American media, something that there also has long existed in the Ivy Leagues and with the Pulitzer and with Davos and with all these different clubs and organizations where they accredit each other and they decide who's allowed. There's a reason why Trump's lawyers got disbarred, but the left-wing lawyers that lie repeatedly and who commit property tax fraud and things like that don't ever get disbarred. It's because they've taken over the tools of accreditation. You have to give them a lot of credit. They went from 100 years ago with barely a foothold in peripheral unions and being hunted through Hollywood and being hunted through DC, trying to root them out, and a real underdog movement, to controlling every single one of the commanding heights in 100 years. It was a long march. They took it really seriously. They did it really well. They did the jobs that a lot of conservatives don't want to do. They went into academia. They went into this accreditation. They went into journalism. That's one thing we've always been trying to change. The Blaze, before that, Federalist, the Daily Caller, is getting more people to join this profession, for example, who don't just want to be the next Ann Coulter or Tucker Carlson, but want to be the next journalist. Want to be people who are really breaking news, like the next Joe Hanneman, the next Steve Baker, the next Chuck Ross, and promoting those people. I mean, that's why we started a journalism award group at the National Journalism Center that gives out substantial prizes, $10,000, $20,000 prizes every year for the best works and journalists that are going against the narrative. We have to take that sort of stuff seriously to push back against it. And to the Trump administration's credit, they're finally really, as Republicans, finally taking this stuff really seriously, taking the money away, undermining the credibility, telling the AP or Reuters or whoever to take a hike, kicking them off the press pools and saying, we don't need you. You're not even really that relevant as you used to be. And it's been effective, and it's good to see people fighting back.
Yeah, we want the truth out there. We want all of the accountability for people. We want this to come to the forefront. This is why we're bringing you stories like this. But Chris, it's not just us. JD Vance also wants some indictments. Let's go ahead and take a look at the vice president.
They would take something that supported a Hillary Clinton campaign talking point, and they would overemphasize it and exaggerate it. They took anything that actually contradicted that narrative and they buried it deep. And through that, they actually laundered Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points through the American intelligence services. That's a violation of the people's trust. That's a violation of what our intelligence services should be doing. And I absolutely think they broke the law. And you're going to see a lot of people get indicted for that.
So, Chris, it doesn't matter whose name that they use, right? They could go through and they could go say Hillary Clinton. They can say Adam Schiff. Really what this is just the machinery that is behind everybody out there in D.C. that has been going through and figuring out, all right, this is what we need to push this intel narrative forward. But how do they go through and actually address this if we don't have the indictments that JD Vance is asking for?
And if it was a machine, it would be easier to take apart. And people call it that, like it's La Cosa Nostra or something. But there aren't actually orders being given in a lot of these different situations. Sometimes there are, which Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and others have been uncovering, and some of the good work that's coming out of Congress, Chuck Grassley, et cetera. But it's more like a living organism. A lot of people just know what to do. They know what their duty is. They know how it works. You don't need to tell it to breathe in order for it to take its next breath. You don't need to tell its heart to beat in order for its heart to beat. These people are committed, and they know that you feed information to journalists. Journalists are hungry. You just throw in bait, and from there it'll spread. You know that the late night show hosts who are finally getting canceled because they're not funny and they just become more mouthpieces for this propaganda network will put it out there. You know that if you put out a couple easy words that make this, or phrases like 30-year low, which is totally bollocks, by the way. If you put out these phrases that allow people to sound smart, they'll just repeat it over and over and over again. All the networks ad nauseum, like they're all speaking with a single voice because they don't actually know, and most of them aren't actually doing the reading. So they're going to look at their friends and see what they're doing. Twitter was an extremely useful tool for that for a long time. I don't know if all of this would have been nearly as successful. The crusades that happened against the corporations, the wokeification of American corporate life, the wokeification of a lot of the heights that we saw of American business and academia and media. If Elon Musk had controlled Twitter earlier and been open to the ideas he's open to now earlier, and not been actually pushing this stuff into that ecosystem and that narrative. But you need those punishments, like you said. And it's so refreshing to see JD Vance actually talking like this. Can you imagine Vice President Paul Ryan talking like this? I mean, maybe Vice President Dick Cheney, who was pretty much an aberration as far as those go. You wouldn't ever actually hear Vice President H.W. Bush talking about this. Absolutely not. They would do the thing that they do, which the consultants told them threatening. Well, they make a point. Like, they don't point at them, just use your thumb. And they would say, it's inappropriate for me to make any kind of to discuss an ongoing operation. But what's really important is that we all get along and that America's unified. That's what they would say. And then the left would just sneer and go back to trying to put them in prison the next opportunity they got. Vance is built differently. That's why they hate him so much, by the way. They really deeply hate JD Vance. Trump is built differently. That's one of the reasons they hate him. And that's why so many Republicans hated Trump so much, too, is because he's not just a disruptor of the Democratic establishment or the elite establishment. He's massively a disruptor of the Republican establishment. He's exposed so much of it, starting with him on stage back in 2016, saying, yeah, I did this, I did that because I'm smart. He kind of appealed to that American love of the billionaire who's not standing outside the house saying torch the mansion, but is inside the house, like Teddy Roosevelt, throwing the chair through the glass and leaning in and saying to the people, everyone in here is super corrupt. Everyone in here is super bad, and they're all screwing you, and you need to do something about it. I'm opening the door, come on in. People like that in the United States, and they like people actually going to hold them accountable. And JD Vance talking like this now is also important to kind of give you a little bit of a white pill with all the black pills that you want to take, because, like you said, this has been going on forever. I mean, just this one investigation has been going on for 9 years, and we used to go on with he was talking right there to the Fox Business House, and Maria Bartiromo, she's been talking about this for 9 years. I used to do the show with her once a week and sometimes co-host, and she would always say, when is someone going to go to prison? When is someone going to go to prison? And the answer is always never, never. But when you see that coming out of the vice president, when you see the stuff coming out of the FBI, when you see the DOJ aligned behind this, when you see it being put out to the newspapers, it actually gives me a glimmer of hope that maybe a couple people will. And the way you train a living organism, unlike a machine, is you can't just remove a couple cogs. You have to punish it. You have to make it feel actual pain. And putting people in prison and showing that there are consequences for these actions will help you do that.
Listen, I'm not going to hold my breath because I've seen how this has been going, but I would love to believe that that's going to happen. As long as we're talking about vice presidents, let's go ahead and bring Kamala Harris back into the conversation because we haven't talked about her in a long time. And Kamala loved nothing more
out for this one
than a Venn diagram. She loved them. She had them all over the place, right? So if we bring the Venn diagram, the Kamala Harris Venn diagram back in, and we have Joe Biden, we can do the auto pen that they're talking about with Oversight Project and our friend Mike Howell, and then we bring Adam Schiff in and the pardons, right? This is all coming together now. All of these stories that we have been talking about on the mandate for the last few months are now coming together in this one story that we have here. So where do we think, Adam Schiff, he's been pardoned. Is this going to last? I mean, the auto pen is going to change a lot of things because Adam Schiff right now, it looks like if we just go with what we know right now, hey, like prison time, like that's looking more appealing if you're sitting here on the right.
It is, and they need a test case. The auto pen thing is going to come down to a test case. A lot of people, even inside the White House, were skeptical it's ever actually going to happen. A lot of people around conservative DC are skeptical it's actually ever going to happen. But Mike Howell's really laid it out. You just need that test case where you charge somebody with crimes that have been revealed and they try to appeal to their pardon. And you have to make the case then. So choose your case carefully. Choose your judge carefully. Choose your jurisdiction carefully. And you're going to have to look at this pardon and decide whether or not it's legitimate. And then the Supreme Court's going to have to figure that out too, because it is not just going to stop there. There's going to be an appeals process. Meanwhile, you've got a limited timeline. I mean, maybe Republicans have 8 years. Maybe they've got 12 years. Maybe they just have the remaining 3.5 or so before there's a Democratic president that comes in and all this stuff gets shut down and all this stuff ends. And then by the time Republicans get back, either they've lost their appetite for it or everyone says, listen, this is old news. Statute of limitations has run out, this and that. They need to pick that case, fight the pardon question, fight its legitimacy, which I actually think they've got a good case for, because this is not a power given to the executive, as we've talked about in the mandate. This is a power given to the president, not to his officers, not to the Oval Office, not to the office of the president, but to the president specifically. So if he wasn't doing it, he wasn't even aware of it, which will be hard to prove, then maybe you can really pop that balloon and start to go after all these different people.